Assalamu alaikum everyone, how are you? I welcome you all to this course on business case studies, which is a self-study guide. Your course code is Management 528. I am Yalman Ansari, and this course is going to be the first series of lectures that we are going to record. The series of lectures include 5 in all, and today's lecture would focus on the background of case study. It would talk about how case studies are used in teaching. It talks about how students should pursue the case study to analyze the problems given to them. I welcome you all to this session, and I hope we will try to make this case study session a very fruitful, beneficial, and memorable. So now let's start with our series of presentations in this. As I move forward, I would like to tell you about myself, what I've done, what my background is, what kind of experience that I have, so that you have a bit of self-confidence in terms of the teacher who is going to explain to you the nuances and the tricks to deal with case study. As for my introduction part, I am Yalman Ansari. I have done my MBA from Thunderbird School of Global Management. I'm a class of 2007 graduate. I have done specialization in supply chain management from International Trade Center, Geneva, which is a part of United Nations Council for Trade and Development, and WTO, which we are all quite familiar with, World Trade Organization. I got a distinction in that. I was a merit scholar at Thunderbird School of Global Management, and I have a very diverse nature of work experience with numerous consulting firms, advertising agencies, technology firms, and accounting firms. I'm also a trainer, and I train company executives starting from the entry level to the mid-level to the senior level executives. I have actually trained with some companies hired as an external trainer with Marigas, with Metro Cash and Carry, with CST, Canteen Store Depot, quite familiar, normally well known as CST basically. So, but very few people know about actually the real name that the acronym stands for, CST. And I have been also involved with training of supply chain managers that are taking courses in international purchasing and supply chain management, thereby being on the panel of International Trade Center as their corporate trainer. Let me share with you a brief profile of mine that is with Octara, which is one of the leading training companies in Pakistan. Just to give you a snapshot on what I've been involved with, just to let you know what kind of background I'm coming from, so that it's easier for us to understand each other from where I'm coming, and how this background and this experience can become fruitful, helpful, and more meaningful in making this lecture fruitful and beneficial to you. Alright, here's my brief profile on the website of Octara, which is a part of TCS, the famous well-known courier company. And I'd like to show you the training that was advertised last year, which was on strategic contract risk. It was a training of one-day workshop basically held in Karachi and Lahore, and the target audience was basically executive managers involved in strategic negotiations and contract, that how they actually steer negotiations and how they actually manage those contracts by mitigating risks and to make it more strategically focused and oriented to gain competitive advantage through contract management. So this is just a brief profile, and there's a list of companies I've been training. I've been training these companies for over the past more than 5 years actually. I was based in the US earlier, so where I have this interaction with these companies to train their employees, both in my consulting management role with Accenture and the Monitor Group, which is now part of Deloitte Consulting, called Monitor Deloitte. And these are the contents of the training workshop, basically. So that's all about my introduction, and now let's talk about the first session on the case study learning methodology. I welcome you all here once again, and we'll make this journey very purposeful and meaningful and very pleasurable as well. Alright, so now you know me better, so now we will make this journey more pleasurable, more comfortable, and more easy to go through, because the thing that we are going to deal with right now, it's not that easy. I'm not just saying to discourage you, it's just that students think that this is something that's not so easy to handle. I was also a student like you, having majors in accounting and marketing from Wichita State University, where I was first exposed to a real way of dealing with cases. Although I've been exposed to cases even before that, even in Pakistan, where I was doing my undergrad. But at IBA, the kind of exposure that we used to have in case study was way different than what we actually had in the foreign universities, especially the American business schools. So with that, I move on to my next slide, which is on common perceptions that most of the students harbor about case study. हम लोगों के ज़हनों में केस स्टडी के बारे में तरह तरह के परसेप्शंस हैं, तरह तरह के ख्यालात हैं. कुछ अच्छे हैं और कुछ इतने हौसला अफजा नहीं हैं. When you talk about students, they always come up with one complaint of reading a lot. The cases, they all talk about details, qualitative details and quantitative details. Quantitative are more number oriented in terms of financial reports, financial statements, market analysis, market research insights, and qualitative, that you have to find out the real meaning, the underlying meaning when you read the cases. And those cases that you read, each time you read, it's difficult actually to understand when our reading comprehension is not that accurate, it's not that strong. Why? Because we don't get to read things a lot. So my first recommendation, whenever we discuss cases with students and they have complaints about it, I start with this thing that there is no shortcut to reading. Try to improve your reading comprehension. This is the foremost important part, and there's no way around it, you know. So, common perceptions about cases. That talks about one thing that we have to keep in our mind, and that is the role of a student. One role is that you think you should play, and the other role is that is expected by your teacher. And in this session, I will also try to explain the role of the teacher, his or her expectations. So, the first thing is elaborate on interaction between student and a teacher. On the first day of your class, you are given a syllabus, which is a course outline, that tells you about the requirements that you have to fulfill to pass this course, the assignments that you are going to be working on, the projects that you are going to be working on, and above all of them, a list of cases. Most of your teachers give you a list of cases in advance of the classes, so that you can read them over and over again to actually understand their gist, to understand their underlying meanings. So for better analysis, you can come up with, in advance, better preparation. So on the first day of classes, now you have a course outline here and a list of cases. Now the thing is, when we talk about cases, then we talk about the expectation of the teacher, which is actually not mentioned in those cases or in the outline given to you. The syllabus, I mean. And this is where the first disconnect starts between a teacher and a student. So this is what I'm going to talk about. When you are given cases in a course pack, which is a thinly wrapped plastic sheet containing lots of cases inside it, the teacher comes up with the requirements that he or she attaches to those cases. But students don't have any tool at their hands in order to how to come up to that expectation. So when the first instant of case study discussion in class takes place, students like me, if I were to give you my example, that on the first day of my class, when I was first introduced to this session of case study and it was taking place and the teacher was facilitating that discussion, I could see from my left side, right side, from my back, from my front, from everywhere, students are raising their hands and commenting, and student is like so much frantic about class participation. And it was like, hey, what's going on? It's like a fish market or what? And the teacher out there holding a case in his hand is roaming here and there and listening to different students and then commenting on their points. So it was like totally rumpus, a totally chaotic situation that I was finding myself in. So instead of making a very lasting impression on me, case studies just appear to me as if they are like a fatigue. So when I went for my home and I was like feeling or worked up or fatigued, that cases, they are time consuming and they're very difficult to handle. So it was a kind of a very discouraging factor not for me, but also for most of the students. And I find myself right now in your shoes, that how you would actually feel when it comes to that case study sort of a thing. So that's why this is a very good opportunity, that before you actually start talking about cases, start discussing cases and start solving those cases, you have a guide in your hand through these series of lectures, in which I would try to make this thing quite simple, easy to understand, and easy to solve. So the teacher on the first day gives you a book, and then gives you a course pack containing lots of cases. And you know what? That book given to you actually serves as a recommended text. Yes, a recommended text, not a compulsory text. In actual case study environment, which exists at most of business schools abroad, there's hardly any book that students are supposed to bring to class and discuss. They have to bring to class cases for class discussion, and the book is assumed to be read by them at home on their own. So the teacher is responsible for case discussions, where teacher role is more like a facilitator role. Facilitator role means that teacher encourages a discussion, a mutual dialogue in class, where students discuss different dimensions of cases. Students are asked to prepare for cases before they come for a class. And the interaction between teachers and students involves a mutual dialogue. One phrase that we commonly use in this case study scenario is that of cold calling. Cold calling is that phrase which you might also see on your course outline. The teacher asks at random questions, and any student who has been pointed by a teacher to raise and give the answer without any prior indication is the core idea behind this phrase, cold calling, that you are caught off guard by teachers. During the case study discussion, teachers at random ask students to participate, and they ask questions, and the students are supposed to answer those questions. And the more you are involved in this kind of case study discussion, the better off you are to answer those unexpected questions that the teacher might ask of you. So it's better during the class discussion that you know your work, you know your case details, and you are mindfully, you are physically you'll be present, mindfully, eyes fully observing, you should be present in class, and taking important points during the discussion would help you a lot. One thing more that I would like to say about teacher-student interaction. It's about grades. We all want to have good grades. And the situations where most of the course focus is on cases, it would be even more imperative it would be even more important for students to worry about their grades. So you must keep in your mind, if you ever face a situation where the more focus is given on cases, and ideally this is a very good situation, yet many students fear that situation. But anyways, if you are in that situation, if you find yourself in that situation, then keep this in your mind, that cases are actually the practical application of what you learn through the book, through the course book, through the recommended course book which is given by your teacher. So that course book tells you the principles and the case study by giving you a real life business situations as for that application of concepts. So this is what is very important. And if you start with this mindset on the very first day, you can perform very well and to your best expectation see the results as you want to see them. This is the interaction part, and during this session you would come to know as we go along that there's an overlapping role between teacher and students. Sometimes teacher would be playing like a student role, and sometimes students would be playing like a teacher role. This all happens during that case study discussion in the class. So you should be prepared for that, a role play sort of a thing, where teacher would come up with a devil's advocate. He would say, Mr. X, you tell me, if I were the manager of that company, and this is the decision that I was supposed to make, how would you convince me? Because in the case we have studied this and that, so if that is the situation, and if I ask you to be that person to come and convince me, so how would you do that? So this is like a sort of role play thing, which you would very frequently find in the classroom setting taking place. So teacher-student interaction is more purpose-oriented when it comes to case study dialogue, when it comes to mutual interaction through discussion. And this discussion should be led by a fruitful interaction, not only between students and teachers, but also among students. And the beauty of MBA programs is that diversity. If you look at world's leading MBA programs, you'd be surprised to know the variety of students that they have in class. And they learn more from the mutual interaction than actually from their teacher. Because teacher exposes them to such an environment where they actually apply those concepts explained by their teacher. And here we use this phrase, mutual wisdom created in class, through this diverse interaction among students coming from different backgrounds. This interesting demography of students leads to a very enriching diversity, which is unparalleled to any sort of an experience you can find elsewhere. And that is what the core of business studies, that makes business studies worthy, worthy to go for it. Now, How would you deal with classroom experience with case study? My second point. One thing that you have to keep in your mind is that case study is more like involving participation of students. So the classroom experience is more dependent on how well prepared you are for the case. Yes, I have spent my whole weekends reading cases, and during the whole MBA session that I've had, I could count around 600 case studies that I had to prepare for different courses. And this is how we talk about a real applied MBA program, and the beauty of the program is where you don't get to learn concept, but also you apply concepts. So for the classroom experience, one thing that you have to keep in your mind, apart from advanced reading, is your listening skills, your interpreting skills, how you interpret information given. And during the discussion, how do you actually come up with a very strong, convincing argument to prove your point? But here you have to keep a difference between an argument and an informed discussion. During the case study session, when students discuss cases, they are not going into any argument. So much to the point that one starts acting like a stubborn. We should avoid that. That is counted as a negative thing. You should be prepared for cold called questions that teacher might ask you. You should be prepared for any key alternative that you might not have prepared in your case, which your classmate might come up with, and that actually changes the overall basis of your case preparation. So in that situation, how would you deal with the uncertainties? If some information was given in the case, but somehow you couldn't pay much attention to it, and as a result, you later realize this was a very key part of that whole analysis, which alters or changes the entire foundation of your understanding. So in that case, how would you regroup yourself, reassemble yourself, and come back again with a very convincing proposition or an argument, not argument in a negative sense, but in a good sense. So prepare for all these kind of mutual discourse, discussion going on. But the common thing again lies with this, how well prepared you are. And by saying how well prepared you are, it means that you must know the between the lines meaning. Between the line meaning का मतलब ये होता है कि जब आप केस स्टडी पढ़ रहे होते हैं, so जो चीज़ें explicitly, clearly are given in the case, वो तो आप समझ जाते हैं, but there are certain things which are not explicitly given in a case, but जो आप उसको infer करते हैं, inference से draw करते हैं, that you actually interpret from that information, उसको बोलते हैं reading between the lines. और वो चीज़ बहुत मैटर करती है. और केसेस में I think 30 to 40% of the information is what you actually conclude, that you actually interpret from, the given information. और cases में more or less 30 to 40% of the information is not explicitly given. That is actually, you have to conclude, you have to interpret, you have to draw a logical, sound reasoning out of it. So, in the class experience, you have to deal with a cross-questioning. You have to deal with a crossfire, argument coming from here, and a counter-argument is coming from there, and your peers, your classmates, everyone is coming up with your own opinion to prove it right, but in all good sense, meaning they all come up with an informed, well-civilized argument. It's not like a fight. So you must prepare for all these kind of things. Okay? So this is what classroom experience with case study. And the third thing is vagueness about case study. There's hardly any book that actually tells you one shot, one clear cut, one extraordinary method that fits all sizes when it comes to dealing with all different kinds of case studies. As you will soon come to know, case studies are given in different courses. There are case studies in marketing, in accounting, in finance, in HR, in supply chain, in organizational development or organizational behavior, in consumer studies, even in statistics, where you actually apply those formulas, those statistical models to actual situations. Anything that you come across during a course, you must expect case study. But the sad reality is that there is no one perfect way of dealing with cases. It varies, it changes. The methodology is totally changing, invariably changing all the time from one course to another. Even within one course, you might see one case was solved in a different way and the other case was solved entirely a different way. And the other thing is, never look for a clear one-cut solution for a case. There's hardly any. Like it said, that there is never a one solution for a case. You could find some solutions which are recommended solutions, but there is never a perfect correct answer. Likewise, you would be happy to know there is never a perfect wrong answer. It just depends on how good you are in articulating, explaining your point, how good you are in coming up with your point of view, which the other side, and in this case your teacher, would be persuaded to accept or reject. It depends on your skills of convincing ability, of putting forward your point in a realistic manner, coming up with forceful argument in a good sense, how you present the key facts, and through those key facts you identify a real pathway which might not be otherwise observed by any other person. It depends on how much meticulous, how much बारीक बीन, आप हैं इस केस को डिफेंड करने में, जस्टिफाई करने में. और हर केस का जो सोल्यूशन होता है, never look for a clear cut one answer. So this is satisfying for you, however you feel comfortable in justifying your point of view, you go ahead and do it. But as long as you are logical, you are realistic, you are rationality oriented, ये जो आप बात कर रहे हैं वो लॉजिक और रियलिटी दोनों के लिहाज से सही हो, आप केस को बहुत अच्छी तरह डील कर सकते हैं, एंड यू कैन गेट अ गुड ग्रेड, a good grade or good marks in your case related sessions. So now I hope you understand what I mean by vagueness of case study. Okay, there is no one absolute right answer, as no one absolute wrong answer. A wrong answer, if defended properly, could become a very convincing argument, a very convincing point. So don't worry about 2 plus 2 equals 4 situation. Cases are not like that. So in a way, it's a good news for you, as well as in a way it's not so good news for you. But this vagueness is a blessing in disguise. It helps you in thinking. It helps you in looking at things from all different dimensions, from all different points. And it helps you in articulating what you want to say, giving the constraints given in your case study. Okay, so now we talk about case. C-A-S-E, as you can see here. There is a lot of discussion going on in academic circles about how we talk about case, how we deal with case, and how we interpret case. So what I try to do is I went ahead and conceptualized all those points in this little short acronym, which is still a case, C-A-S-E, where C stands for critical incident or crucial element. I'll explain that later. A stands for analysis, S for solution, and E is explanation. जो आपको केसेस मिलते हैं written form में होते हैं, वो ऐसे ही जैसे you read an act, stage drama, या about some scene. Okay, so and so manager is sitting in his office analyzing some documents, and the problem is to come up with the decision whether should we invest in this area or not, or any other problem that is given in a case. It all talks about some situation, something you are worried about, something that draws your attention, something that overwhelms you. So anything like that, that is worth reporting, that is worth writing, you actually incorporate that and you designate it as an example for others to learn from. So that's why it is reported. So be it a crucial element or a critical incident, it is something that you want to focus on. So that is the starting point where the case revolves all around it. And that starting point should be interesting. For example, a company is faced with the challenge of $1 billion investment, and these are the constraints given. And when this real thing is reported to a student through a case study format, then that student feels themselves in that situations also, that they would think that this situation which they might face, which the other person in that organization is already facing, how would they come up with a better strategy, and so on. तो उसके लिए आप क्या करते हैं, नेक्स्ट स्टेप में you come up with your own analysis. If the case given to you in which a decision was talked about that the company was thinking to take or not has already taken place, so in that situation you can also criticize, you can also comment on the strategy of that company, and you can come up with a better alternative, better strategy. And there are certain other cases where this decision has not yet taken place. So in that situation, you are in the driving seat to come up with a better recommendation for this strategy that they want to take or they should take in light of your reasoning, in light of your analysis. तो ये दोनों situations हो सकती हैं यहाँ पे. आपसे कहा जा सकता है कि आप इनको critically analyze करें, या situation आपको given है, decision का भी किसी को नहीं पता, so now you have to take decision on your own. तो ये आपका analysis part हो जाता है. उसके बाद the third part is solution. After analyzing the issue from all different angles, from all different dimensions, in light of the information given in the case, you come up with the best strategy. That is your solution, which you argue on in terms of why you actually recommend the solution and how it's going to solve the problem in the case or the issue or the challenges faced by the company. उसके बाद the last part is explanation. Explanation basically tells you about the strategy that you have advised your teacher, the strategy that you have recommended to be taken up. Then you have to explain that through a presentation format. For that, in some classes, it happens that towards the end of the semester, when all different student teams come up with their own analysis, with solution, then they actually perform a dialogue sort of a presentation with the audience. And in some cases, the top management of that company discussed in a case is also present in your class. It has happened to me 7 or 8 times that the top management from that company was also present in this class, and they wanted to actually see how students have come up with different choices, and then they would actually discuss with you over there, and it was just like very exciting experience that you are part of the decision making process. And it was just like, you know, you are just coming up with your own point to understand what they are trying to say, and then you come up with some clear goal direction, a vision that they might be concerned about, and they wanted a more diverse opinion of students on that, and you actually add value to that whole thinking process that they are going through. So this is a really worthwhile, you know, when it comes to case study, because you not actually contribute in class but also contribute in terms of informed decision making for that company. So explanation part might include PowerPoint presentation, detailed presentation, and a presentation between company officials as well. Although rare, but it happens quite a lot actually now. It's happening quite a lot, because these companies, what they're doing is companies who are really aware of the importance of case studies, they actually encourage teachers to write cases, and then they seek students' help to come up with. Companies who are really aware of the importance of case studies, encourage teachers, university professors, business schools professors, who actually work as outside consultants as well, to write cases on different business-related problems, challenges, issues, and then they seek students' help to come up with different alternatives, different possible solutions. And for that, they come to class and then they observe students and they cross-question them, and then they see how better their strategy is compared to their own strategy, and what are the good points they should look at and then include in their own strategy. So this is a very fun-packed and very exciting exercise, and you would never forget the concept that you have learned through this whole exercise. And that's the main, exciting part of case study way of teaching methodology. So much so now, interaction with the case, and now coming to reality with a case. Why case study matters? Case study is important. Why? Why is that business schools are now more case study oriented? Why is that even for a job interview, now there are case interviews based on cases? Why is that? So the question that all boils down to is why case study matters. For that, we need to look into the evolution of case study, that how this concept of case study evolved. It goes back to early 19th century when the first business school was opened, which was Harvard Business School, commonly known as HBS. And the teachers who just started teaching business and management related courses to students soon found that there is an acute scarcity, बहुत कमी है, of the availability of books on business. So what they did, they derived the idea from medical and law circles, where the practice of case study was long established. How? In medical circles, the patient's interaction with doctor was actually transcribed. Each interaction with the doctor was transcribed, recorded, in terms of the symptoms that the patient had, the nature of a disease that a patient had, and how that actually communicated to the doctor, and how doctor actually examines patient, how the patient is treated, and what kind of symptoms are actually found to the cause of the actual disease. So these all interactions were recorded. They were later compiled into a book form, which was later then taught to students at medical colleges. Because you don't get to have that interaction every so often. So that's why those things were recorded, for students to actually experience this real-time patient-doctor interaction within the class walls. Likewise, in law circles, each case that was defended in the court of law was recorded, not only for legal purposes, not only for documentation purposes, but also for later to be taught to students, law students, so that they can have a real life feeling, a real life application of those legal nuances through that transcription of recorded cases. So the idea was driven from that origin of law and medical circles. So business professors who are quite smart to grab this idea, and they started writing cases on business owners. They would go to them, they would interview them. They would actually experience the environment in their factory, in their office. They would meet with employees, they would question them, what they do, how they do, and what kind of challenges they face. So these things were all recorded in a case form, and all collection of these cases were combined together in the form of a book. So those cases were taught to students in different courses. Those relevant courses would come up with a real insightful explanation of how to deal with those business challenges or business related issues. And that would give students a very value-added classroom experience that without leaving a class, without actually waiting for some business challenge to come or issue to surface, they are actually learning and they are actually applying the real business concepts right there in class. So that's why business case studies became more fruitful, and they were considered an important part of the overall management curriculum. So this is the background behind why case study matters. In today's world, the business graduates venturing into practical professions, venturing into different jobs, in different managerial roles, obviously starting from the entry line positions. They are all faced with the complexity of business. So if this complexity of business is not explained to them early on, then they don't feel quite prepared to deal with those complications, those complexities, those challenging situations. And as a result, it would take them even much more time to get used to that sort of an environment which supposedly they should have been exposed to while in classes. That's why business case studies matters a lot. It pre-exposes you to the situation that you are going to face in a real profession, the real challenges. So this is the real aspect of business cases that one cannot overemphasize in terms of its importance. If you have read a book, but the book never allows you the application of those concepts, even if it does, but to a limited extent, but the real life situation are covered more in depth in cases. Rules of the game. Now the second thing is rules of the game. By game I mean the case study game. You must have observed that how different business schools have turned this case study into a business case study competition. And business case study competition is exactly the replication of the case study exercise in the classroom setting. So it is fun-packed exercise. It's very enjoyable exercise. It's something that you will never forget about, and it's something that motivates you. It's thrilling. It's something that you would never forget about, because things learned by doing are seldom forgotten. So case studies, they are fun-packed. They want the conceptual understanding through action-oriented teams, where different teams are competing with other teams and so on. So what are the rules of the game? I'm not about the business case study. When you are given a case, so what are the rules that are understood and expected that each student knows about them in advance? The first rule is that never go outside the boundary of the case given. Meaning, case might relate to a certain time period. Let's say a case might relate to 1980s time, when the email use was not so much prevalent, right? So when you are given a case for a particular timeline, then you must stay within that timeline. You must not cross that timeline. Second thing is, the details given in a case are considered sufficient enough for you to analyze, to draw your recommendations on, and to come up with your strategy when the risks they are discussed in the case, that how you are going to mitigate those risks. So the information is sufficient enough even for analysis of risk. Don't go beyond and relate some other irrelevant information that might cause the blurriness or the confusion in those cases, because it is understood that while reporting on that critical incident in the case, the teacher has sufficiently enough covered all different salient aspects pertaining to that particular situation. And if you include something beyond that, outside of that case material, to facilitate your argument, then it would become hugely unrealistic, unmeaningful. So always be within the case, be within the timeline. Third thing is, even if you have to make some assumptions, sometimes it happens that there are certain things which are not clearly mentioned in a case, but you can assume in light of the given information. So make sure while you assume something, it should not negate the core essence of the case which has been discussed. It should not be like an assumption at odds. कोई ऐसी assumption नहीं होनी चाहिए जो कि आपके केस की आइडेंटिटी ही को चेंज करके रख दे. For example, there is one company, ABC, that is trying to launch its product in Africa, and they don't see any competitor out there. So what would you think if no information regarding competition is given in the case? To lihaza, you would actually come up with a general assumption that what could be the competitive market forces that a particular company might face, rather than labeling that company as a monopolistic company that has a monopoly because there is no mention of its competitor out there. तो उस केस में इस तरह की overriding assumption ना करें, that would actually make something unbelievable. Assumption जो भी आप करें cases की detail में रहते हुए, that should be in line with the overall flow of the case. Alright? So that is all for the rules of the game. And then we talk about how to prepare for case study. Preparation for case study, again, there is no one short way, one specific approach. because it all depends on nature of a case, and the case keeps changing from courses to courses, from topics to topics, from concepts to concepts, because ये सारी real life situations होती हैं which are covered in a case. अच्छा जी, so now how do we prepare for a case? First thing, do read the case, and second thing, don't forget the first thing, the point number 1, do read the case. G, reading, understanding. This is the end of understanding the case. This is the real thing, and there's no shortcut to it. जब आप केस को रीड कर लें, और while you read, you keep taking important points from paragraph to paragraph, keep highlighting important points, and then try to summarize all those points on one piece of paper. जी, उसको एक पेपर पे summarize कर लें. It is just like when you read a novel. After you are done with that novel and you are asked to actually explain what you read, and you are given a piece of paper to write on, आपको कितनी आसानी से एक structure you have in your mind that you can include and you write on that. Writing all those key points, information, on a piece of paper would really help, because during the class session where the discussion on case study is going on, you would have that little piece of paper in your hand with all important points written on it, and it would be easier for you to actually convey your point, convey your thoughts when you are in a discussion. Because case studies ये fairly lengthy होती हैं. A normal case would be somewhere from 1 page, जिसको short cases बोलते हैं, और एक और word is used for them which is called caselets. Caselets होते हैं 1 page, 2 page, 3 pages, and there are cases which go up to 30 pages, 40 pages. So for those type of cases, it is recommended. It's much more comfortable if you give a synopsis of those cases on a page or 2 or 3, as the case may be. That would help a lot during the case study discussion. Preparing for case study is a very long topic, and we have just started the beginning of it. But it is more important to understand the core basis of case and how it matters in the life of a business graduate. Then it would be much easier for us to prepare for cases for different courses, for different types of challenges, for different type of situations given. But for all of these things, we must know the clarity of case study methodology. So far, we have covered the basic introduction on cases, their importance, how teachers and students interaction take place, and what are the things that students should do by keeping in mind the different rules of the games. And before they start preparing for the case, what are the things that they have to follow? That you have to write key points that you come across during your case study preparation, which would be helpful for you not only in class but also later on when you have to prepare for your exams. In that way, you don't have to read all those pages all over again. So with this, we conclude our first session. Thank you very much.